Why the young brothers so big? What they eating? Why they look like that? Gotta wear big white teeth, gotta wear white skin sheets like maggots, like large, like they the domestic oil of death in clan sweat. Woo! Blew them up, doctors. Woo! Picking them off like dark carton, make themselves a fashion of profitable, soft, muscular bells. Somebody gotta clean this shit up. All us, U.S. animals, on one floating stage we knew was a toilet, the third oldest.
About 2 years passed before I saw Sin in the neighborhood again. He had opened a crack spot on Marcy. We didn't speak to each other. Instead, we stared into each other's eyes until we were both out of visibility. I guess he didn't know what to expect from me, and I didn't know if he still held a grudge against me for not taking him seriously. Whenever we did see one another, I would usually be in a car and he would be standing on the corner of Marcy. A sense of fear and anxiety always came over me whenever our eyes met. I observed his routine and made an effort to stay out of the neighborhood as much as I could. I tried to shun him because I didn't want to stir up any repressed feelings. Avoiding him was hard because he was getting money on the block, but I kept myself surrounded by people. That way, if he tried to approach me, I wouldn't be alone. He never tried to talk to me when other people were around because he didn't want to make it seem like he still had feelings for me. That is why when Louis told me he was looking for me, it caught me by surprise. Louis mentioned he was in the stash house, but I had no idea where the stash house was. I didn't want to seem interested in Sin, so I ignored Louis and sent him to the store to get a Dutch. He rode down the block on his bike to the bodega. When he came back with the cigar, he told me Sin was waiting for me across the street from 15 Marcy Place. I took the cigar and walked down the block to meet him, knowing whatever he wanted to tell me would not be good. A part of me wanted to run home, but a greater part of me wanted to face him and my fears. Walking down the block, I began to think about all the things Sin put me through when we had interacted with each other. The naive part of me wanted to believe his intentions were to apologize, but logic overrode that notion. My heart felt as if he owed me something more than peace of mind when I walked through my neighborhood. He did not expect me to be as calm as I appeared. Silence camouflaged my fear. I learned very early in life that men expect women to reveal themselves because women cannot contain their emotions. I took a masculine approach to masking my emotions. This is how I reinvented my individuality in the streets. The objective was to seem as though I could handle situations like a man. I became less revealing and more ambiguous. When I approached him, instead of talking, I lit a cigarette and waited for him to speak. He stared at me for a while before he said anything. He studied my face as if he could read my thoughts. When he finally spoke, his opening was cold with no apology attached. He said, "Oh, it was good. I know you're on a paper chase and I need someone I can trust to hold my car down for me. Can you drive my car to an indoor parking lot and hold my keys down until I call you? I'll pay you a G." Sin didn't mention anything else, but I imagined there would be either drugs or weapons in the car. Instead of asking about the details of the act, I told him I would think about it over a smoke. He began to walk into the building and I followed. Trailing behind him, I began to question myself as in, how could I be manipulated into this situation for a measly $1,000? At the time, this seemed like easy cash, and Sin knew he could use money to lure me back into his life. There was something about the suaveness of his tone that made me leery about the situation. How could he trust me if I was the same person that broke his heart? Maybe he felt that he could trust me because I never told on him. My addiction blinded me and I pacified the situation in an effort to get high. I thought I could smoke a blunt with him and resolve our differences before agreeing to his proposition. I followed him up the stairs and into a first-floor apartment. He had the keys to all the locks. Naturally, I assumed the apartment was his until I saw a lady come out of one of the bedrooms. After observing her erratic behavior, it was obvious she was a drug addict. The apartment was immaculate, and I analyzed the surroundings trying to define the status of this woman. I didn't know if she was a dope fiend or a crackhead. Those fiends are obsessively clean, and judging from the appearance of the apartment, I could say she was a heroin addict. But the constant squeaking ultimately labeled her a crackhead. I felt sorry for her. We locked eyes for a moment until Sin threw her a rock. He paid her in crack pieces, as most dealers pay off fiends who house their supply. Once she got the rock, she locked herself back into the bedroom. Her addiction kept her confined, and Sin in full control. His possessiveness of the space did not surprise me. He was tall for nothing, a man with a major Napoleon complex. He offered me something to drink, and I told him I would grab it because I didn't trust him. I went to the kitchen and rinsed out a clear glass cup. I looked on top of the sink for a dish rag so I could use soap to wash the cup. I heard a knock at the door. I suspected it was one of the fellas from the block coming to re-up. Sin walked up to the door, looked through the peephole, and opened it. In entered two Spanish guys. I could hear them, but I could not see their faces. At that moment, a part of me wanted to leave. I didn't know these men, and I didn't want to be involved this deep. I was around the corner from my house, and if anything went down, it would be difficult to escape retaliation, because this was my hood. Where else could I go? They walked into the apartment and entered the living room. I found the rag and lathered it up, slowly washing the cup, completely ignoring them. A tall, skinny Blanquito walked in, while the other stocky Trigueño trailed behind. The Trigueño had a telephone box in his hand. I couldn't help noticing it, because it was the only thing that either one carried. The guys were clean-cut and did not appear to be customers. I knew somebody was buying or selling something, but it wasn't for personal use. After I rinsed all the soap off the cup, I looked into the refrigerator, pulled out a container of orange juice, and poured it into the glass. I stood there in the kitchen for a while, drinking, wanting to walk out. I worried about them seeing me, whether I left or stayed in the apartment. When I finally walked over to the table in the living room, both guys watched me as I grabbed the lighter off the table. I searched for the Newports in my pocket and pulled one out. Both men then asked me if they could have one. I kept my cool and handed each a Newport. I turned and sat on the sofa and lit my bone in silence. Sin told me to roll up and throw a bag of chocolate at me. I told him I needed another Dutch, but before he got a chance to ask, the light-skinned guy offered to go to the store. I walked him towards the door and handed him $1, while Sin talked to his partner. When we were making our way towards the exit, he introduced himself as Mora and asked me for a light. I stared silently into his light brown eyes and gave him fire. After locking the door, I walked back into the living room and sat at the table, crushing the chocolate, pulling out seeds and stems, cleaning the bud before I twisted up. Sin and the other guy began to weigh the contents in the phone box. Sin had a small scale, which appeared to be more of an inconvenience than an asset. They had to divide the coke into 4 sections in order to weigh it. When they finally finished, the content was placed back into the box. I waited to see if money was going to be exchanged, but Sin didn't pull out a dime. Sin sat on the sofa looking pensive, with his shirt covering 2 guns hidden between the sofa cushions. I noticed one of the pistols sticking out and gave him a look. He checked himself and covered the handle. The guy began to feel uneasy, sensing tension in the air. He began to tell Sin that he wished he had done the deal in Washington Heights. "Easy, Santana," was all I heard Sin say over and over again. Sin was a snake. He got dude to trust him by lending them his car to pick up the work. The car wasn't worth shit, but these cats were fooled by the gesture. Santana kept looking out the window for Mora, hoping his friend would return quickly. I could see Sin and Santana clearly from the top end of the table. Santana stood erect by the window in front of me, and Sin sat patiently to the right of me on the couch, in between the 2 pistols covered by the XXL blue and white striped t-shirt. While Santana was looking out the window trying to rush Mora to come back to the apartment, Sin shouted, "Tell him to get me a Yoo-hoo." When Santana turned around to face the 2 of us, what awaited him was the unexpected introduction to Miss 357 and Mr. 9mm. Poor Santana stood stunned and peed on himself in disbelief. Everything was quiet for a brief moment, as if the world stopped moving. Then silence broke with a knock. Santana yelled, ¿Qué lo que está pasando? What the fuck is this? The knock at the door turned into bangs, followed by kicks that echoed through the living room, where the three of us stood, two in panic and one in control. I asked Santana to relax so we both wouldn't get hurt, and I told him to cross his arms on his chest and taped his entire upper body until the tape was gone. I had no idea what I was doing. And then I laid him face down on the hardwood floor and sat on top of his butt. I didn't know what to do next. When he put her in my hands, Sin reached into his pocket and pulled out a satin black pouch and threw it on the floor by my feet. He reached for the other back pocket, pulled out his wallet, and retrieved $500. He took a good look at his address and placed the ID card back into his pocket. Sin snickered. You ain't got no jewels, Papi? But Santana was speechless. Mora continued to pound on the metal door with his fist, as if the noise could stop or was already in progress. Sin told me to aim the gun at Santana while he brought Mora back into the house. He walked towards the door and left Miss 357 with me for protection. I held her, amazed at the weight of the instrument. I was trying to maintain control when I heard Sin struggling with Mora at the door. I couldn't see what was happening because I was on the floor. That's when Santana chose to break free. The motherfucker broke loose from the duct tape. I tried to put pressure on his back with the gun so he couldn't move, but he was fighting me off. I began to scream, "He got loose, he got loose!" And in an effort to protect me, Sin came running. Everything got blurry for a second. A shot rang out, and it echoed in my ear. I checked his breathing. He's still breathing.
Gold, days, nights, ounces, a 40. Mules move, a 40. Move, mule. What you may call how we here. And get no response. How we, where we feel, how we hear, how we sound, and how sometimes time is some. Even our own sound fears us, faults us, and remembers the first us confronting Columbus with thunderbolts. When was we not good citizens sober? Was we boating and drowning and rotting like we was the wrong targets of the armed guts of our own young?